Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. So we're studying from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. We're studying text 30. It's November 20th, 2020. I'm here with Madhura Prabhu, Ramachandra Prabhu, and Carly. Hello, Carly. And on net, here's Kim, Sarah, Lakshmi Priya, Daru Brahma, Eze, and I'm assuming Malini, maybe Narayan is there also. Hare Krishna. So we'll start with the Sanskrit. If you'd like, you can respond after me. Dehi Nityam Avadyoyam Dehe Sarvasya Bharata Tasmat Sarvani Bhutani Na Tvam Shochitum Arhasi. Okay, so this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 30. Dehi nityam avadyoyam Dehe sarvasya bharata Tasmat sarvani bhutani Natvam shochitum arhasi Dehi nityam avadyoyam Dehi sarvasya bharata Tasmat sarvani bhutani Natvam shochitum arhasi Dehi nityam avadyoyam Dehe sarvasya bharata Tasmat sarvani bhutani Natvam shochitum arhasi. If others would like to recite the verse.
Dehi nityam avadyoyam
Dehi nityam avadyoyam
Dehi sarvasya bharata
Dehe sarvasya bharata
Tasmat sarvani bhutani
Tasmat sarvani bhutani
Natvam sochitam arhasi
Natvam sochitum arhasi
Dehi nityam avadyoyam
Dehi nityam avadyoyam
Dehi sarvasya bharata
Dehe sarvasya bharata
Sarvani bhutani
Tasmat sarvani bhutani
Natvam sochitam arhasi
Natvam sochitum arhasi.
Dehi natyam avadyoyam
Dehi nityam avadyoyam
Dehi rasa bharata
Dehi sarvasya bharata
Tasmat sarvani bhutani
Tasmat sarvani bhutani
Natvam sochitam arhasi.
Natvam sochitum arhasi. Would someone on internet like to lead the chanting of the verse? Dehi nityam avadyoyam. Dehe sarvasya bharatam. Tasma Hare Krishna. Would anyone else like to chant the verse? Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Dehi,
Dehi,
the owner of the material body.
the owner of the material body.
Nityam,
Nityam,
eternally.
eternally.
Avadya,
Avadya,
cannot be killed.
cannot be killed.
I am,
I am
this soul.
this soul.
Dehe,
Dehe,
in the body.
in the body.
Sarvasya,
Sarvasya,
of everyone.
of everyone.
Bharata,
Bharata,
O descendant of Bharata.
O descendant of Bharata.
Tasmat,
Tasma,
therefore.
therefore.
Sarvani,
Sarvani,
all.
all.
Bhutani,
Bhutani,
living entities that are born.
the living entities that are born.
Na,
Now,
never.
never.
Tvam,
Tvam,
yourself.
yourself.
Shochitum,
Sochitam,
to lament.
to lament.
Arhasi,
Arhasi,
deserve.
deserve.
Translation, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 30. O descendant of Bharat, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, Lord Krishna establishes that the soul is immortal and the body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna, as a kshatriya, should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and teacher, Bhishma and Drona, will die in the battle. On the authority of Sri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body, not that there is no such thing as soul, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity resulting from the interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kavalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Garange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 text 30. Dehi nityam avadyo yam dehi sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natram shochitum arhasi. O descendant of Bharat, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. Hare Krishna, welcome Rohini. And I'm here with Madhura, Ramachandra, Carly, and Rohini. And in the last few minutes, we've had some new arrivals on our internet. Hello, Fayanen and Garuda and Damayanti. And Kara. Hello, Kara. Welcome, everyone. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, he starts his purport with, the Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. So this is the 20th of a series of 20 verses, starting with the first of the 20 is Ashochanam Chochastran, Pragyavadams Asasecha, Gatasuna Gadasumscha, Nanushochanti Pandita, where Krishna says to Arjuna, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. The wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And so then Krishna goes on and he establishes this most vital distinction, vital distinction that really constitutes the ABCs of spiritual life. Dihinosmin yatadehe komaram yoganam jara tatadehantara praptir dirastatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of the change of body that we commonly call death. Because the body's always changing. We can say, at some point, the body will die. And well, that's true. In a sense, a finer truth is the body's already dead, right? The body's it's like this. The body's like a vehicle. It's like a car. It's like a car. So the car could appear alive and animated when the driver's inside. And the car can appear alive and animated when the driver's inside. But like maybe an alien from Mars or something will say, oh yes, there's all these living entities on this planet Earth called Toyota and Chevrolet and Renault and Mercedes. But we know, well, no, the car is dead. It's made of rubber and plastic and metal, but it appears alive because the driver's inside. So similarly, this body is made of dead matter. The body's made of dead matter, and it appears animated because that irreducible quanta of consciousness that is actually us, that's there. So the body is always changing, and then there's just like, oftentimes we start some of our seminar programs following this part of Bhagavad Gita, asking people to imagine that you're looking at a photograph of yourself from when you were 5 years old. Now, when you look at that photograph, do you say, who is this person? Who is this person? No, you say, that's me, that's David, that's Carly, that's Michael, that's Kim, that's Sarah when I was 5. We know from chemistry that there's not one atom, not one molecule that was in your body when you were 5. Still, there's some constant identity that I call David. This indicates a distinction between the body and the self. It indicates that the self is something completely non-physical. So this is a series of 20 verses here in the beginning of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna establishes that. So this is not some abstract philosophy, it's quite vital. It's described in the Bhagavatam, Bhayam Dvitiya Biniveshatasya. The root cause, because this is about us being actually happy and peaceful. It's described, the root cause of all anxiety, all insecurity, the root cause of all material stress, and everything that comes from that, the envy, the jealousy, the depression, the root cause of all of it is misidentification of the eternal spirit self with material body, misidentification of spirit with matter. So this is the fundamental foundational distinction for spiritual life. Prabhupada sometimes describes this as the ABCs of spiritual life. To understand, I'm not this body, I am that atomic unit of sentience that animates the body. And to the extent that we don't get that, we will be in anxiety. It won't matter how many years of therapy we do. To the extent that we're in the illusion that I am this body, we will be in anxiety. Doesn't matter how many pills I take. Just stating it as it is. This might not be good news, but potentially it's actually very good news, because it's the foundation for a formula to actually experience peace and fulfillment, happiness, joy, empowerment in a way that is not dependent on anything external. A happiness that will never be crushed or destroyed by time. So yes, this is philosophy, and we're meant to apply it to get the actual life experience that we're looking for. Okay. So look, like we've following this part of Bhagavad Gita, we've given some rational analysis, might say some rational arguments to establish the nature of ourselves as non-material, as that irreducible quanta of consciousness that is us. And then Prabhupada cites the authority of Sri Krishna. So it's like if we're awakening, then we get like, yeah, I want to realize who I am is not the body and spirit soul. Yeah, the body is a vehicle. Not that the vehicle's unimportant, right? Just like if we hear that there's a car crash, do we immediately say, oh, is the car okay? I hope it's not totaled. No, we said, was anyone injured? Did anyone die? Because we know the driver of the car is a lot more important than the car. Maybe later when we hear, oh, no one's in the hospital, say, oh, did you get insurance money for the car? That's secondary. So similarly, the body has its importance, just like the vehicle has its importance. We want to care for it. And at the same time, more important is the driver of the car. And most, 99.999% of human society, it's about trying to take care of the car. And then just like, okay, say if I wash my car, fill it with gas, take care of cars, but then I haven't eaten in 3 days, I haven't taken a shower in a month, I think, no, I'm clean, I just went through the car wash. Well, no, that's the car, that's not you. Okay. No, I'm not thirsty, we just filled up. Now, you haven't had a drink of water for like 2 days. Now that's gasoline for the car. Yeah, sure, you don't want to neglect that, but you're really not doing well. Okay, so that we would think, yes, someone who's taken care of that way and neglecting the driver, yeah, they probably need to be institutionalized or something, right? So similarly, so it's described that Atato Brahma Jigyasa, the special function, the special opportunity for a spiritual being having a human experience, or referencing to Teilhard de Chardin, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. For a spiritual being having a human experience, our special opportunity is not to attend to taking care of the car in a glorified way. Our special opportunity is to inquire about these things. Who am I? What's the purpose of life? What happens upon the change of body we call death? Is there a supreme intelligence? What am I avoiding? What's the message from this fear that I'm feeling? Okay. Other species, they each have their special gift in God's creation. And the special gift, the special opportunity of the human form is we get to inquire about spiritual matters, the distinction between spirit and matter, the distinction between spirit and supreme spirit, looking at what is the purpose of my life, the essential functions of animals, we might say, can be reduced to eating, sleeping, mating, and defending or fearing. Okay. So in the human vehicle, we don't want to neglect our eating, sleeping, mating, defending. At the same time, the recommendation from ancient wisdom traditions is, okay, take care of the car, take care of your eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and give that, the minimal required. Kamasya Nendriya Pritir, Labo Jive Tayavata, Jigyasa Tattva Jigyasa, Natoyascha Karma Be. Life's desire, like the aim of life for humans, is recommended to not make the aim of life sense gratification of material senses. Human life is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. So let's keep body and soul together in a healthy way, keep the vehicle nice, and give the bulk of our energy to inquiry about absolute truth. Nothing else should be the aim of one's life. So absolute means, because like there's relative truth, like if I say, I am David Wolf from Philadelphia. Okay. There is humor there. Yes. So if I say, yes, I am David Wolf from Philadelphia. So, well, that's true, but it's a relative truth. Was I David Wolf from Philadelphia 1,000,000 years ago? 100 years ago? Will I be David Wolf from Philadelphia 200 years from now? Okay. So I am not this body. I'm an eternal being. I am conscious in consciousness. I'm an eternal spirit soul. My inherent nature is loving devotional service to God. So that's true in all space and time. That's true. That's absolute truth. That's true in all space and time. So a distinction between the relative and the absolute. So Prabhupada, it's short purport, but it's quite fascinating. He says, okay, the soul is different from the material body, because in a very succinct purport, Prabhupada, he's really addressing and he's really summarizing this series of 20 verses in Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada is summarizing many major types of philosophies that were current thousands of years ago and are current today. Really, there's nothing new under the sun. So Prabhupada says that so the soul is different from the material body. So that's established by logic, by the authority of the Vedas, and by personal experience. And he says, not that there's no such thing as soul. There's some philosophies, very current today, that in a sense, there's no such thing as consciousness. Actually, consciousness is an illusion. Are you aware of that?
Conscious of that?
Yeah, are you conscious that consciousness is an illusion? So that philosophy doesn't hold water but it's pretty prevalent. And then Prabhupada goes on to another misconception, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity resulting from the interaction of chemicals. So that philosophy, that misunderstanding, it was prevalent, it was existent 5,000 years ago. Krishna addresses it in this series of 20 verses. He says to Arjuna, even if you're of the opinion that there was no soul or consciousness, and then with the combination of chemicals, then consciousness came into being, and when this combination of chemicals dies, then there's no more consciousness. Still, you have no reason to lament. And Krishna gives arguments like, even if you have that misconception, hypothetically. So in modern day, that's the theory of epiphenomenon. The idea that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of combination of matter. Okay, so it's called epiphenomenon. In consciousness studies, you'll hear that word in theory a lot, epiphenomenon. So that might sound nice and all. But actually, just because, like if you're like a progressive thinker and you're scientifically minded, then you'll accept either there is no consciousness and it's all just an illusion, or that the soul consciousness, it's an epiphenomenon of a combination of matter, starting with the primordial soup. Okay, well, if that's supposed to be the scientific point of view, then science means that we could provide, it means empirical, we can provide some empirical evidence. So please show me all those examples where you've mixed matter, you've mixed chemicals, and consciousness resulted. Please show me either in nature or in your laboratory. So the fact that there's no examples in nature and they've never in any laboratory combined chemicals to create a conscious entity, this torpedoes the epiphenomenon theory of consciousness. So it's all addressed here. There's nothing new under the sun. Right? There's nothing new under the sun. Epiphenomena is addressed. The blank slate is addressed. Some of you have heard me share that, like, I've been involved in the human potential personal transformation movement since the late 1970s, since I'm 18 years old, when my sister Carol got me into some seminars and things. And so over a long time now, yes, so more than 4 decades, I've seen a lot of seminars and approaches to personal development. And essentially, there's 2 philosophies. One philosophy I call the blank slate philosophy, which Prabhupada's addressing here. Prabhupada and Krishna in these 20 verses, they address all these philosophies that are current. Blank slate, meaning at the core, we are nothing. And on the platform, on the foundation of that nothing, we can invent any possibility we choose. So that's not Sattva Tov, it's not transformative communication, that's not Bhagavad Gita. So I call this understanding of consciousness that Krishna is giving in these 20 verses as a foundation for genuine spiritual life, the diamond philosophy. At the core, we're not blank slate. At the core, we're metaphorically, we are diamonds, that atomic unit of sentience. And just like a diamond is always strong and brilliant and effulgent and radiant, so is the soul possessed of all those sublime spiritual qualities. And those qualities are described in these 20 verses. And this is the last of the 20. And a diamond can be covered by dust, dirt, thick mud. We It's not like, yes, my diamond by accident got covered. No, we've invited dust, dirt, and thick mud. And so the process of transformation of consciousness to transform from being dull, from depression, from envy, from anxiety disorder, to shining brightly as the spirit souls we are. The process is one of uncovering. The process is one of uncovering. And so Bhagavad Gita, this impressed me in my early years when I was reading Prabhupada's books, not absorbing much or taking them too seriously. It took me more than 1,000 plates of prasadam till I agreed to chant one round of japa. It's well known. It's true. Many years, and I would just consume plates and plates served by Stambadas Prabhu, State College, Pennsylvania. And then eventually my heart got enough purified, so like, okay, I'll chant one round. Okay.
Quite a ratio. 1,000 plates for one round.
Yes,
If you
yeah.
continue like that, it would have been really.
Yeah. Actually, one of the Lord Chaitanya was married and his wife passed away, and then he got married again. And then one of his wives, either it was Lakshmi Priya or Vishnu Priya, yeah, she had a thing like when he was away, or that something like for each round of japa, she would have 1 grain of rice, and then at the end of the day, whatever grain she had, she would cook that, and that would be her food. So it's the same basic principle. She would have 1 grain of rice for 1 round. I had 1,000 plates of like samosas and sabji till I chanted 1 round.
Similar.
So it's kind of, yeah, it's pretty much the same. Okay, so all right, so Bhagavad, so what I was impressed with is like, it not just this book not just gives a philosophy that makes sense, that's satisfying for the intellect, far more satisfying than any other philosophy I was or am exposed to, but it also gives a process for each of us to realize the truths of this philosophy. It gives a process. And that process, it's called Bhakti Yoga. It's called Bhakti Yoga. And it's like Prabhupada likes that term, science of self-realization. So science means there's a hypothesis that logically holds water, and no one needs to accept my point of view that this is rationally, logically, this is perfectly tight. You can apply your intelligence. That's what I did for many years. Tried to find flaws. I still try to find flaws. And I'm always frustrated in my fault-finding propensity. And you say, okay, but just because a hypothesis seems to make sense doesn't make it true. Then real science, then there's an experiment, to get an experience. Okay, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen makes water. Okay, as far as the algebraic chemistry, it seems to make sense, but I'm skeptical. Okay, that's a sign of intelligence, to have doubt, skepticism. So we don't need to accept on blind faith. Similar with Bhagavad Gita. We can go into the laboratory, mix the 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, and see if we get the same result as so many chemists over the centuries. Similarly, here the laboratory is our heart, our consciousness. As Prabhupada says in this part of Bhagavad Gita, we are conscious and we are consciousness. We are made of consciousness, and we emanate consciousness, just as a photon, a ray of light. It's made of light and it is illuminating. We are conscious and we are consciousness. And so we can say, well, I believe, I don't believe. And so it's giving an experiment that we can give ourselves to experience, to see what we experience. Just like any rigorous experiment, it's helpful to adjust the set and setting. I heard like for some very fine physics experiments, you couldn't do them even in an insulated building in the big city. They need to go to the desert so that there's no vibrations and like that. So there's different set and setting. There's different regulations we can follow to create that peaceful environment within in order to develop finer spiritual attunement and senses. Prabhupada, he indicates here about violence. And that, of course, there's a time to protect what's dear, like if innocent people are being attacked, there's a time for violence, and Bhagavad Gita relates to that scenario. And then more essentially, Prabhupada's talking about violence is discouraged. It's described. Jivo jivasya jivana. The nature of this world, the nature of material existence is violent. One living entity is food for another, right? For physical nutrient food. I remember I had a professor, Dave Smith, at the Florida State School of Social Work, and he would describe academia as a food chain. He would describe academia as a food chain with one level of professors just trying to eat and destroy and crush another, and this journal editor having this political bias, like that. So whether gross or subtle, one living entity is food for another. And the idea is to nourish the vehicle, we're going to do violence. And the idea is to minimize. The idea is to minimize the violence. And so if someone's talking about, yes, I want to experience, actually I had this conversation recently with someone. She was talking about, she wants peace within because she's so agitated and disturbed and life is not going according to the script. And then somehow the conversation went to her choice of diet. So till that conversation, she wasn't making a connection between if she's eating the results of gross violence simply because her tongue, there's some bumps on the tongue that tell her she likes the taste of blood and flesh. She's eating the results of gross violence. It's a choice. Yeah, it's just not going to correlate with sweet inner peace. And then she realized during the conversation that for decades she's been running from that obvious truth. So to have a prasadam diet without killing animals, this is conducive for inner peace. Similarly, we're already stuck in layers of illusion, the primary illusion, I am this body. And then there's layers and layers of masks and illusions and facades. So to pierce through the illusion, probably the best way to do it is to smoke a joint. No, so actually ancient wisdom traditions suggest, no, not really. That if you're interested to really awaken to clear consciousness, stay away from substances that further cover the consciousness, even though they might give some temporary escape high that comes from an escape or something like that. So that's why to prasadam diet, vegetarian diet, stay away from intoxication, stay away from illicit sex life. These are helpful rules of the road that help us to drive our car and achieve our destination, along with practices like studying Bhagavad Gita and discussing this sublime transcendental philosophy. There are so many types of books and sound vibrations we can and maybe do expose ourselves to that further entangle us in the illusion that I am this body and I'll be happy. by temporary gratification of the senses of the body. Yehi sam sparsha jamboga dukkhi unaya evate yantavanta kanti anateshu amate Buddha. That's a verse from Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter. It describes that a wise person does not make their goal, again, does not make their goal the temporary gratification of the senses or the subtle senses, the mind, the intellect. Why? Because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. First, they don't actually satisfy the driver of the car anyway. So that's one point. And the other point is, even if they did satisfy the driver of the car, they have a beginning and end. We're eternal beings. We're looking for Brahma, Sujed Brahmasakyam Tvanantam. Tapo Divyam Puchakina Sattvam, Sujed Yasmad Brahmasakyam Tvanantam. So the special opportunity of human life is to voluntarily give up some immediate gratification of the external senses to cultivate the bliss that is actually natural for the soul. And the soul in its enlightened state is Atmarama, self-satisfied, ever expanding, ever deepening spiritual bliss. And that's a process here, Bhakti Yoga. And we get to embrace the process to whatever extent we choose, 1%, 100%, somewhere in between. And again, this is a foundational series of 20 verses. Today we've begun to study the 20th of those 20 verses, and then the Bhagavad Gita is going into another section, and everything builds on these 20 verses. O descendant of Bharat, he who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any creature. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening. Thank you for your presence. I welcome at this time, if anyone would like to share any comments or realizations or ask any questions related to anything we discussed here, the verse, the purport, or any aspects of this philosophy of the transcendental process of Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna. Questions or comments?
I'll share.
Parampara Prabhu.
So it was, hearing about the distinction between the soul and the body, spirit and matter, not the body. I've heard that many times.
Yeah.
And at the same time, what kind of realization do I have of that, on day-to-day speaking? But the one thing I can say for sure is that is just how much I fully accept that at this point.
Yeah.
Because I was just sitting here thinking, I was like, well, what was I even accepting before I accepted that?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had any kind of solid philosophical foundation, or
like in retrospect, you're realizing you never really thought about it or even thought about thinking about it very solidly or deeply.
I mean, I think there's, growing up in Christian tradition, there's the soul exists.
Yeah.
So like, okay, accept that.
Yeah.
But it's more like you have a soul. And even that, like, how much did I ever put consciousness into that? And go to how deep can you really go with that, philosophy anyway? You have a soul, the soul begins, because the Christian tradition, there's not a soul before this life, like this kind of starts with this life, but then it can be eternal going on. So there's like, that's not really eternal if it's just starting. So it's like, how much even grasp did I have of that concept? Yeah. So just how, and I feel like whenever I share this with people, regardless of, like my sister who's Christian, who's really authentically Christian, in the Christian process. Like she's sincere. Really, it's not just a rubber stamp. She's really like, open and process about it. And it's like, if I say, oh, the difference between the soul and the body, that we're a soul and we have a body,
Yeah.
and like it's just so easily acceptable. I feel like I just was when I first heard that, I was like, oh yes, that sounds right to me, and and it didn't really have anything to really go up against or conflict up against. And I say that with others, I think it's very easily understood.
Yes,
It doesn't get into the technicalities of it. Maybe it can be harder with if there's some you have a different philosophy, but it's just so simple, simple, profound truth.
Thanks for sharing from Prague. Yeah, that I really appreciate your whole sharing and where you started. I resonated with that in a sense. I never thought about it, so concretely. That like before I came to Prabhupada's teachings, that I didn't even have a conception of what we are. I heard this and that. I was in biology class and evolution, and I went to different Christian groups, and I studied actually in Jerusalem in the yeshiva. I heard from different things, but I never even thought deeply, what is my conception of self? And then Prabhupada comes along, and it's just so clear, simple, rational. And I relate to what you say, that, I completely accept this. I completely accept it. I have very little realization. At the same time, I completely accept this. And I have more realization of the truth that I am spirit, soul, and so are you, and so are you, and we're not the body. I have more realization than I had 40 years ago, and even 5 years ago. So that's exciting, that each year that I practice this process, I'm realizing myself as a spirit soul. It's not theoretical. It might be just a few drops, but the process definitely works. And apart from realization, I completely accept it. There's no other philosophy or philosophical paradigm that even comes close to getting as much clarity and sense. And I'm reminded of a writer who comes, I believe, from the Christian tradition, C.S. Lewis, and he said, you kind of quoted him. C.S. Lewis said, he said, we don't have a soul. We are a soul. We have a body. So he got it. He got it. And most spiritual traditions, there's some idea there, but it's rare from my perception that it's really like a clear idea. In studying Judaism, it was fascinating, but it's kind of like there's 5 levels of soul. Some of those here have all 5 levels. Some have less than 5. We won't go into that. Okay. And it's true. And it's like, it didn't hold water for me. And it didn't match my common sense, my experience, things like that. But so Prabhupada, Krishna is so clear. But even we can read Bhagavad Gita and so many of the clear concepts, if we don't get Bhagavad Gita as it is, it also becomes muddled and things like that. Thanks for your sharing. Bhakti Yoga Retreat. I'm hearing you, but your voice is very muffled, kind of tinny and muffled. Let me see here.
You hear me?
I'm hearing you. It's a little, I could probably understand what you're saying.
I was just making a joke that it's the first thing that even though you were giving a philosophy when you had stuff at the totem with all 5 levels, it didn't really affect you. So, it's nice to what people do.
I heard you say something about the 5 levels.
You type it?
Yeah, we're trying to get it happening. Okay. You're hearing me? Okay, yeah, I heard you say something about the 5 levels with some some sort of amusement. That's kind of what I got. That's kind of what I got. Yeah, and anyhow, we won't go into yeshiva philosophy here. Thank you, Molly. Thanks for your comment. Are there other comments or questions or sharing? Going once, going twice.
Well, the other thing you mentioned, universality of the soul also. So there's, like you said, there's with Jewish tradition that there's 5 different kinds of souls. I think, and maybe Chinese philosophy, there's an animal soul, there's a human soul, Christian animals don't have souls, especially lower animals, they don't have souls. So there's something like, why all those distinctions? And it's like, so the, what Prabhupada is giving is there's one type of soul.
Yes.
Everybody, we're all equal, and we're all the same type of soul. And we're individual souls. That's the special thing, that we're not just all one, but just the equality, the simplicity. There's what's the rule that's like the simplest explanation is usually the
parsimony.
Law of parsimony. So
Parsimony.
Very parsimonious.
Parsimonious, yeah, exactly.
That it's just the souls are all equal, and it's all eternal, before, present, future. There's no need to have distinctions or, when does it start, when does it stop, where does it go, this kind of thing. So
very clear, and according to our consciousness and desires, we have different types of covering on the diamond, but everyone's diamond, while it's unique, it's also, everyone's diamond is eternal and connected with God. Thanks. And all of these different, just like we hear in this one verse, it kind of gives us a foundation to understand blank slate philosophy, epiphenomenon philosophy, materialism. And as we go on Bhagavad Gita, it describes, okay, there's theories that there's different types of souls in different types of bodies, right? The idea is, Jewish people have one type of soul, and Christians have another, and Black people have this type of soul. And it's not, so that's knowledge filtered and distorted through the mode of passion. Then there's knowledge filtered and distorted through the mode of ignorance. And so like, that's something else that I so much appreciated from the beginning when I started reading Prabhupada's books, that this philosophical paradigm gives me a foundation for understanding where other points of view, other perspectives, and where they are, where those perspectives, how they're aligned with truth, and where there's deception going on and an illusion. A story back from almost 40 years ago, I shared sometimes. I remember I had some friends, not so close friends, but anyhow, so they took me to a born again Christian group, and it was very sincere people and like that. And at the same time, I was beginning to go to the lectures from Stambadas, beginning to read like Science of Self-Realization from Prabhupada. I was in my early 20s at the time, and early 80s, like the early 1980s. And so for what I was getting from Prabhupada's books and talking to the practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, I could understand, so Jesus is a pure devotee, and God, directly or through his representatives, he speaks to different people according to time and circumstance. The principles are always the same. The details might be different. According to time and circumstance, but the principle is always to support each individual, each group, meeting them where they're at, to gradually advance towards self-realization and God realization. And so it helped me understood, those who are trying to follow Jesus, this and that. Okay. And then so it was a very nice experience at the Born Again Christian Center. then I would ask questions. I remember I asked, like, okay, well, what about those who are practicing Krishna consciousness? Because they also seemed like nice people. You're nice people, they're nice people. I was searching. I'm not saying I was searching so sincerely, but I was searching for something. So yeah, what about those who are, chanting Hare Krishna? And all the only response I could get was they are followers of Satan and they're going to burn in hell forever. Okay. Could be. But again, like it wasn't intellectually satisfying. It wasn't intellectually satisfying. So yeah, so Jai Prabhupada. Carly. Yeah, Carly.
I don't really have a question yet, but I just want to talk about this more.
Yeah, sure.
Because I guess I was born again
Yeah.
Christian in some ways.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and then I threw it all out, God, everything.
Yeah.
And I had an experience which was inspired by something I wouldn't do ever again. But when I met God,
Yeah.
I was arguing with him, and I was like, I was told to read the Bible.
Yeah.
To learn about love. And everything I knew about the Bible, which wasn't that much, was mostly negative.
Yeah.
Was about some stuff like that, where you're following Satan if you have a different.
You'll burn in hell forever.
Right.
Sir.
And I said, well, that's not love.
Yeah,
There's so much that's not love.
Yes.
And the response was, what's me and what's man, because it was written by men.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So, so it kind of goes along with that question I already have, and that idea that there's a lot of deception, a lot of manipulation.
Yeah.
And so when they say there's 5 souls, or when
Five levels
some
of
levels
the soul.
of soul, or animals don't have souls,
Right.
that's someone's interpretation of
Yeah.
a story,
Yeah.
basically. Because when I read the Bible, I don't see definite theories. I see
Right.
stories.
You see story, yeah.
That people have taken and might have manipulated in whatever way they want to believe the world is, or the spiritual world existence is. So it's a very relevant topic to something I think about all the time. And it kind of calms any anxieties about, and makes it clear what I was thinking about this topic in general.
Thanks for expressing, Carly. Thank you. I appreciate your expression, and I resonate with it. I resonate with your interpretation that it's my point of view too, that the whole 5 levels of soul, it's a speculation that probably has some manipulative motivations. That's my interpretation. So I match yours.
Yeah.
And then I read Old and New Testament from Genesis to Revelation, and I appreciate it very much. It was a very moving, enriching experience, and I could feel spiritual Shakti there. At the same time, there's not much philosophy directly there. It's just the truth. I mean, there's stories and personalities, words of Moses, words of Jesus, words of God. I don't trust that it's come down unchanged because of the manipulative tendencies, but I think a lot of it is authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved the experience of reading Bible cover to cover, Old and New Testament. Same time, there's not much philosophy. That's why, in my experience, and also I lived in Muslim villages for a few years in the Middle East, so I have a lot of experience with the Islamic followers and Christian and Judaic. And when it goes to philosophy, then it seems, not that there's no truth, but it seems kind of speculative like that. It's kind of, my experience in the yeshiva, which I also loved. I studied at a yeshiva in the old city of Jerusalem called Eish HaTorah, Fire of the Torah, overlooking the Wailing Wall, HaKotel. But my experience was like if I had a question and I asked 3 rabbis, I'll get at least 4 different answers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun in a sense for the mental speculative propensity, but as far as just clear, solid understanding, that tends to be missing.
Well, that's probably why I've kind of gone from Christian basis to explore other things like Buddhism, because it's a little more clear. You're not guessing at what the story means all the time and like spending so much time theorizing. It's more just like simple, very helpful life philosophies that you just want to get to a little bit quicker and apply in this lifetime instead of spending a lifetime trying to figure out what it means. You know, like I just prefer to have I wouldn't say they're answers, but they're theories that are
Like at least
pretty well thought through.
reasonable, well thought out responses.
Yeah. So they've already done the work. So now we can just, enjoy the results.
Thanks for that. One more experience from my yeshiva days, which was late 83, early 84. And I remember I would have some questions, and some questions I would have, and it was fast. I was very intellectually stimulated by that whole time. But I would have some basic questions, like about the 5 levels of soul or the nature of soul. And sometimes I would get an answer. I would get an answer to even ask that question, you need to study Kabbalah for 40 years. And then the same question, I could go to the Bhakti Yoga Center, ask a new Bhakti or Bhaktin, and I get a very clear answer. So, yeah, that's my experience. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted
Rohini.
Just thinking about what Carly's sharing, and what where the conversation is going, and just what I've heard from some other members of the community recently talk about how their intellectual process is that they could read something and then they have all these different mental speculations, and it's kind of like they have 5, 7 different ideas of what's happening. But reading the Bhagavad Gita, it's just like really, like Prabhupada makes it really clear. Like your mind doesn't need to go anywhere else but to read what Prabhupada says, and it's like very clear what the answer is. And that's, this is why I'm appreciating the conversation and feeling more deeply appreciative of Prabhupada, and just like feeling the shelter there, the shelter that I receive from Prabhupada.
Thanks for sharing, Rohini. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Madhura Prabhu.
So we hear so many examples, like you just gave a very nice one, it's a car accident. And generally the first question is the driver okay? Yeah. And we hear, like we have these bodies, when we refer to the body, no one says I hand or I knee. We refer to our body parts with possession. It's my hand. My hand, my hand. So my refers to the person. So after we hear so many very solid logical reasons why we are not the body. You just see someone who is injured, he has a leg amputated, but he's still there. He's
the same person.
Same person. Yeah. So after hearing so many things, why is it that there's so few people that accept that? And there's still and even people who hear these things, they're still living as if they were a material body. Yeah. Like pleasure to this body is giving me happiness, where we know that pleasure to this body is temporary. So
ultimately a source of misery.
Yeah, so anyway, that's my question. Why is it that so many people hear very solid understanding and conclusions why we're not this body, but yet they still can't accept it?
Okay, yeah. How come so few are coming to this knowledge, what to speak of realization of this knowledge? That's you have the question. Hare Krishna, Rohini. Haribol. Thanks for your question. Okay. Well, I could certainly speak philosophically and sociologically. I'm thinking like yeah, like I'm definitely in that category where I kind of know it in a cognitive way. Like I'm like in that category of like, oh yeah, I know it's not healthy to smoke. I know it's bad for me. Definitely we shouldn't smoke. And I'm smoking like a pack a day. Okay. So I'm still living as if I am my body, although less than I was 40 years ago or even 5 years ago. So that's encouraging. And that like, yeah, I got this fierce attachment to to the idea, the principle that I am this body and my enjoyment is my bodily enjoyment is paramount. So your question is why? And in a sense, there is no why because it's irrational. I don't have like a good explanation of my fierce attachment. And I'm imagining for the other 7.2 billion spirit souls having a human experience and the unlimited quadrics in other species, that it's a similar fierce attachment that like because realizing I'm spirit soul, that leads to serving Krishna with love and devotion, and kind of like we came to material existence to take a fierce stance that Ishvaraham Hamboki Balavan Siddhaham Balavan Sukhi, to take a fierce stance that I'm going to do my own project. I don't want Krishna or God in the center. And then all of the material suffering, all of the disturbances, the distresses, sometimes light, sometimes really traumatic and severe, it's all meant to turn us to cultivate realization of who we really are and to turn to God in a spirit of devotion. And so, yeah, we developed and we retain, I can speak I statements or we statements, a fierce dedication to want to be God instead of wanting to serve God. And the result of that is attachment that I am this body, I, me, mine, and gratification of these bodily senses. This is the goal of life. So that's what comes to me in response to your question. Thank you, Madhura Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Malini.
I have a question connected with Madhura Prabhu's question. I was speaking with an older devotee recently, and we had a philosophical conversation. It was very enlivening. And we were looking out old age. Do you hear me this time?
I'm hearing you, yes.
Yeah. We are looking at old age and how, the older we become, the easier it is to kind of control the senses and be detached from the senses and not identified with the body as much. Like there is pain and ache, and then naturally the drive, the sex drive, like decline by itself. So many things like that make it, in a sense, easier to not identify with the body.
Yeah.
And then we were considering, okay, so that feels okay. Well, it's great in a sense. But then we were looking, okay, well, what will happen when we take birth again? Is the memory of that detachment from being the body or detachment from sex drive, because naturally the body doesn't want it, so it's like detachment. Is it detachment? In a sense, if I don't like chocolate, then there is not much renunciation in not eating chocolate like that. So we were looking at how does that carry to the next life? That natural detachment that happened because of the aging of the body, and if it does carry or not. We were just discussing this.
Thank you, Malini. I appreciate your question very much. So you're talking about the blessings of old age, blessings that the senses aren't as agitated, sexual other desires decrease, and like that, and so that, but it's not an automatic blessing. So you said it's natural, like, yeah, that's the point when we experience old age and disease, COVID. Yeah, I'm not getting up from a sitting position quite as quickly as I did 30 years ago. Like, that's the idea. Yeah, okay. So let me decrease my determination to try to be happy by satisfying this desire. Let me cultivate spiritual life. But it's not natural. I mean, no, I'm saying it's not automatic. It is the purpose of experiencing old age disease. But Prabhupada often talks, sometimes he mentions Florida. Prabhupada he has many lectures, will go, yes, no, there are old men, they're old men in Florida, and they're going to the club to see naked women dance and this and that. Okay, so that there's the experience of decreasing potency of the senses and decreasing efficiency and effectiveness of the body and the muscles, but not everyone develops a non-attachment. For some, they just become, and that's why there's just there's multi-billion-dollar industries dedicated to try to feel young again, right? There are some, as old age happens, they're like, oh, okay, what hormone can I take? Oh, let me try to do the things I did as a teenager, or they just become depressed. They become angry people because I can't jump as high or enjoy as much as I did, and my body's not as attractive. They just become angry, frustrated. They don't become detached. So detachment is a choice. It's a response to the effects of old age, and it's definitely not automatic. In fact, consumerist society is militantly opposed to the non-attachments. No, keep trying to draw. Come on, Granny, go to the disco. Yeah, like that. And so, whereas, yeah, the real blessing as the body gets old is, yes, let me give 100% to a contemplative life, to realizing who I am as spirit soul, engaging in the eternal service of the soul that's not dependent on whether the body's 5 years old, 15, or 95. So if a spirit soul in a human body responds to the context of old age and disease and impending death with non-attachment, and maybe did not complete the process, then that impression, the soul will take that to the next birth. And maybe it means the next birth, Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yogo Bhashto Bitaita, maybe the next birth will be a birth that has a special opportunity to cultivate spiritual life from the time of the womb. Yeah, so that impression the soul will take. That'd be a samskar. But there are some as they're experiencing the effects of old age, they just become more and more demented and degraded. And I've seen it, even in my early, like 16 years old, I used to deliver drugs to a nursing home, legal drugs from my cousin Arnold's pharmacy. And then in more recent years, I did a lot of social services for the state of Florida. But I've seen, so if one doesn't develop that non-attachment, then there's no spiritual impression on the soul. Thanks for your question. Bhaktin Sarah.
When you say it is correct to understanding that, it's not possible for me to develop the detachment if I'm not simultaneously developing spiritual attachment.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Yes. I agree with that, because thanks for that, Sarah. It's a vital point. The nature of the soul is to be attached. And that's so important, because we can hear so many philosophies. Just don't be attached. Just don't be attached. Just don't be attached. Great. Just don't be attached to anything. The only problem with that is that it's impossible. Completely, categorically impossible. Otherwise, it's a great idea. But so it's impossible. because the nature soul is to be attached, and just as Sarah is indicating. So our choice is, are we going to be attached spiritually or materially? So sure, we hear someone like Mother Malini speaking, and she's talking about, like, she's experiencing the blessings as the body gets older. The body gets older, that supports non-attachment, because like Malini is cultivating for many decades now spiritual attachment to Bhagavad Gita, hearing and sharing, attachment to chanting the names of God, attachment to consume only food that's been offered with love and devotion to Krishna. So that's such an important part of this equation, that we will not experience in any significant way detachment from matter, unless we're simultaneously cultivating attachment to spirit, and thus the vital importance of cultivating realized knowledge of what that means to be attached to spirit. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janayatya Shuvairagyam Gyanam Chayad Hetukam. That as we engage in devotional service, the devotional activities, then naturally detachment from matter and realization of spirit, and getting that param drishta nivartita, getting the higher taste that comes from spiritual attachment, that comes naturally, and then detachment from the material happens also naturally. Thank you, Sarah, very much. Thank you all for your presence and participation. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Haribol. Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.